Hello, welcome to another English Sparkling with Tweedy video. Sorry, staring directly into the sun there. Hopefully my big fat head can do a reasonable job of blocking that out at least some of the time if I don't move too much. I feel like Ambriel deserves a second throw of the dice after that slightly unfortunate incident with a faulty bottle. Wine faults can happen to any producer. I had bought 3 different wines from Ambriel: the rosé, the unfortunately faulty Blanc de Noir 2016, and this, the English Reserve. So this is, I think, a really interesting wine from them. It is a Demi Sec. I've always found those names of the different sweetness levels of champagne traditionally, and they've been adopted by English sparkling, really quite misleading in a way. The one we're all familiar with is Brut, between 6 and 12 grams a litre of dosage, essentially sugar. How much sugar is added to the wine after the secondary fermentation. So we're all familiar with Brut, but I suppose that translates as strong, doesn't it? 6 to 12 litres, that's relatively low. There are lower styles than that, but traditionally, champagne was much sweeter than that, and this is a style called Demis Sec, which I suppose means semi-dry, but don't be misled, it is actually much sweeter than Brut. So this particular Demis Sec style has 32 grams, I think it is, per litre of dosage, effectively sugar added. So this is intentionally a very sweet style of sparkling wine. They've used a combination of, I think it's, the bulk of it is Pinot Noir, 60-something%, oh, the sun's gone behind her, probably gone all dark now. 60-something% Pinot Noir, 30-ish% Chardonnay. I'll put the exact breakdown. And this seems to be a sort of funny quirk of Ambriel. Something like 1% Pinot Meunier. Again, like the 2% in that Blanc de Noir yesterday. I'm really not sure what that can be doing, but they obviously know what they're doing. So I'm interested to open this up and see what it's like. You know, you have to go into this with the right sort of expectations, the right mindset. It is going to be sweet, but the this sort of funny attitude we all have to sweetness in wines in the past few decades, probably as a result of, you know, bad experiences with Blue Nun, Liebfrau milk, whatever it was, in the 1980s. I think, you know, we all need to sort of reset our ideas about sweetness and whether or not it's a good or a bad thing. Sugar helps to express fruit in a very interesting way. I, for one, am quite excited to try this, see what it is like. Probably only the second time I think I've ever had a Demi Sec style English sparkling wine. Night Timber also makes one. It's called Cuvée Chérie. Did I mention the name of this? I thought the name was really cute. It's called English Reserve. That's the name for their Demi Sec. Well, that was a nice idea. It's a nice pale gold colour. There was a decent pop there, but I didn't see a huge mousse to begin with, which is interesting. On the nose, I'm initially getting actually a little bit of a sort of Chardonnay character. It's a little bit like that buttery, rich Chardonnay character, which is interesting because this is very much Pinot dominant, 60-something% Pinot Noir. There's definitely some fizz there, but not a huge amount. Should also add this has had a long time of lees aging. Was it sort of 7 to 8 years, something like that? Crazy amount of time on the lees. Maybe a hint of something like stone fruit character there, berry fruit maybe. A little bit shy on the nose, which is making me feel a bit nervous after the that unsuccessful Blanc de Noir. But that is lovely on the palate. It's got a sort of a honeyed kind of richness to it. I don't know if I'm imagining this, but the presence of that extra bit of sugar, I think, actually changes the texture quite a lot. I don't know if that's part of the reason we're not seeing huge effervescence here, but it is a little bit more syrupy almost. There's a sort of slight thickness to the wine that you wouldn't get, I don't think, in something in the Brut range. It is balanced by really nice bit of zing there. Every bit as much acidity, I imagine, as you would find in this wine had the 32 grams a litre of dosage not been added. But now it's sort of creating this really interesting sweet and sour effect. Sherbet lemons, something like that. Still not getting much on the nose, interestingly. There's definitely fruit character there on the palate. I'm getting peaches, I guess sort of summer fruits, sort of berry fruits. A little bit more stone fruit though, actually. A bit more sort of peaches and plums. I really like the sweetness level of this. I'm happy to admit. I believe I went into this with an open mind. Now, generally, I like zing, I like dry wines, I like Brut Nature, I like those styles with very little dosage. But it doesn't mean that I'm not also interested in the other end of that spectrum, especially when you have a wine that has all this zing and all this freshness. I think it can take a lot of sugar, and I think it does some really interesting things in terms of the texture of the wine. That's something, you know, at least on the palate, really quite luxurious and quite mouthwatering as well. Getting a little bit more on the nose now. I think there's some sort of mixture of orchard fruit and stone fruit, so possibly hints of peaches. I'm tempted to say cooked peaches. Weird dish I made the other day, steak and peaches. Yeah, a little bit like grilled peach, maybe kind of poached pears. Subtle, but quite nice, actually. Pear is a note I don't normally like in sparkling wines because it reminds me of the dreaded Prosecco, but it's subtle, but it's pretty pleasant. But I'm loving this on the palate. It has a fantastic texture. It's still got that fizz, it's still got that sort of lightness of the effervescence, but it's kind of slightly viscous from that extra sugar, as this sort of sensation of being ever so slightly syrupy in a way, and yet also balanced by really bright acidity, sort of sweet and sour kind of effect to it. Not like sort of a Chinese sweet and sour sauce, but you know, like sweets, like things like sherbet lemons that sort of trade on having a kind of acidic punch as well as a lot of sugar. My instinct always with Demis Sec is that this is something that you would probably want to have as a dessert wine, but I actually don't think it has to be. I think this, as it says in some of the blurb, I think this would make a great aperitif as well. You just need to sort of prepare yourself mentally with the fact that yes, it is going to be sweet. Sweet is not bad, particularly here where it's balanced with this really kind of bracing zing. I could really get used to that. Cheers.